Maxwell Jacob Friedman, MJF, your current international champion. And yes, I'm still calling it the International Championship, even though MJF renamed it the American Championship, simply because we're less than 2 weeks away from All In at Wembley Stadium, where MJF defends that championship against the Billy Goat himself, Will Ospreay. And I firmly believe that Will Ospreay is going to win that title back. And when he does, he's going to rename it or return it back to its original name, the International Championship, because Will Ospreay will not be carrying around the American title. Now, I'm not a big fan of just willy-nilly changing titles, names, or because I feel like that devalues the title itself. May I remind you, we had the Legends title, followed by the TV title, followed by the Global title, followed by the Grand Championship, I believe, in TNA. Ridiculous mid-card championship back then. I don't think that's what's happening with the AEW International Championship. I think this is more of a case of a very cunning, a very cool, a very smart heel that MJF has always been. He knows how to get under his skin, and at the same time, you still enjoy watching him. At the same time, you are still entertained by him. I think it's a very common, very entertaining tactic, because this is not the first time that MJF has done this. May I remind you, 2024, election year. Take you back to 2020, yet another election year, when MJF ran for World's Champion. And he went to All Out and got his first pay-per-view loss, his first AEW loss, as a matter of fact, under the AEW banner against Jon Moxley. So again, MJF is a master at gaining heel heat, at gaining cheap heat. And again, he's the best, most interesting, most entertaining superstar that All Elite Wrestling has at this moment in time. More than Bryan Danielson, more than Strickland, more than Will Ospreay, more than anyone on that roster, bar none. MJF is the future of AEW. That's why I've done a lot of videos where I stated that I do not want to see MJF go to WWE. I think that would be an even bigger hit than Cody Rhodes or any other big star going back to the Federation, going back to the WWE. Now, with that said, yes, Will Ospreay has to become international champion at All in less than 2 weeks. It has to happen. It's Wembley Stadium, his home country. It's AEW's WrestleMania. I don't think a loss by MJF to Will Ospreay in Will Ospreay's home country would affect MJF. Again, Maxwell Jacob Friedman is on the level entirely on his own, especially when it comes to AEW. Doesn't matter what segment he's in, doesn't matter who he's facing, doesn't matter if he wins or loses or if he gets counted out, doesn't matter the angle, doesn't matter and all of that. You give MJF something to work with, he'll make it work. And it's something that AEW desperately needed for the first 6 months of this year. For the first 6 months of this year for AEW, absolutely entertaining wrestling-wise. But it was missing that entertainment bump. It was missing that character bump. MJF brought it back. And again, Will Ospreay can become international champion. You can keep building him up separately, and eventually, if they're gonna go with Bryan Danielson as brand new world champion, we eventually get Danielson versus Ospreay, with Ospreay going over, finally becoming world champion down the line, obviously. And eventually, MJF goes back to his feud, to the rivalry that we should have gotten late last year, but unfortunately, it is wrestling. injuries happen, circumstances play a big role. MJF, Adam Cole, let's run it back. Let's restart that fire. Let's restart that feud, that rivalry between these two men. A lot of people might not be interested in that anymore because it's been so long. It's been almost 9 months since that feud, that rivalry was at its height, but we can't just ignore it. We can't just ignore it. And I would much rather prefer they go back into that feud, back into that rivalry where they have history, where they were the hottest act of last year, instead of just putting Adam Cole randomly against someone else, putting MJF randomly against someone else like AEW likes to do, because their stories are poorly told. They do tell stories, but they're poorly told, they're poorly explained. I would much rather they go back to the MJF versus Adam Cole storyline after All In. But that's just my opinion. Again, not a fan of them renaming their mid-card title just willy-nilly, but right now it serves its purpose. It's gaining MJF some heat. And for all those fans out there saying that, well, we shouldn't be using countries and you know, the fact that, oh, he's over American and he hates foreigners and all that as a part of a storyline, because I'm missing the word. It's played out. It's been done 100 times. Well, guess what? So has everything else in wrestling. And almost everything else in wrestling keeps working. And guess what? This does too. And it doesn't matter. And it doesn't matter if your opinion is one or the other. If you get the superstar over, if you get the rivalry over, if you get the championship over, if the fans enjoy it, if it's entertaining, that's ultimately what matters, because it's a business. That's just my opinion. So with that said, what are your thoughts on MJF renaming the International Championship into the American title? Do you think he retains the championship at All In? Or do you think he drops it down to Raw? And what do you think about maybe bringing versus Adam Cole rivalry that should have happened last year and should pretty much end this year in AEW terms? So with that said, leave your thoughts, comments, and predictions in the comments section below. I'm Alexis Carrillo. This has been Wrestling Talk, and I'll see you next time.